The attic smelled of dust, mothballs, and the faint tang of cedar from the old trunks lining the walls. It wasn't a scent I would have normally tolerated. I prided myself on order, on clean, polished surfaces where everything had its place. But today, perfection didn't matter. Today, curiosity and suspicion overrode every ounce of my self-discipline. Adrian had left that morning under the guise of a major client meeting. I had watched him pack the night before, meticulous as ever, folding shirts like origami, his tie collection sorted by color. Yet something had gnawed at me. Some invisible thread told me the neat exterior hid chaos. I climbed the narrow ladder to the attic, the wooden steps creaking under my weight. The light was dim, spilling through a dusty skylight, catching motes that floated like little secrets. There were trunks everywhere, Adrian's, mine, and a few antique ones we had acquired over the years. My eyes scanned quickly until I found his, a dark brown leather suitcase with brass clasps, scratched and worn, but tightly locked. I lifted the lid and immediately felt that familiar pang of disappointment. I was looking for hidden truths, and so far, I found only neatly folded clothes and socks rolled into perfect cylinders. I bent down, running my fingers along the base. That's when my hand caught something unusual, a seam, almost invisible, in the bottom lining. A hidden compartment. My heart beat faster. What on earth? I whispered to myself, kneeling. The latch was small and delicate, the kind of thing meant to hide rather than protect. With trembling fingers, I pried it open. Inside lay a small stack of papers. A folded passport and a driver's license fell into my hands. I froze. The photo was mine, clear, unmistakable, but the name printed above it wasn't Aurora Reed. My mind spun. And then the itinerary. A one-way flight. Adrian and
Giselle.
The dates? The very day after my scheduled death in the fire. My stomach dropped, a cold, sinking weight. No, this can't be real, I whispered, backing against the slanted wall, clutching the documents. My hands shook, and I could hear my pulse echoing in my ears. Adrian had planned this. My carefully controlled, orderly life, the one I had built on structure and appearances, had been nothing but a cage. The betrayal wasn't just shocking. It was absolute. The life I thought I had?
A lie.
And somehow, terrifyingly, I had survived the fire meant to end me. I looked out the small skylight, imagining the scaffolding I had clung to, the flames licking the walls below. That memory was no longer just survival, it was rebirth. And I knew, as I held the forged documents, that nothing would ever be the same. I had choices now. Dangerous, terrifying choices. But for the first time in my life, I felt alive. I whispered to myself, almost laughing through the panic, time to see the truth through no matter the cost. I sat cross-legged on the attic floor, the forged ID and passport spread in front of me like a revelation I couldn't unsee. My hands trembled, but my mind was racing, piecing together the enormity of Adrian's betrayal. I had always known him as charming, meticulous, confident, the kind of man who could talk his way through a hurricane. But this was something else.
Cold.
Calculated. A one-way flight. My death staged as an accident. And Giselle, his accomplice, waiting in the wings like some shadow in his well-crafted script. I pressed my palm to my chest, feeling the furious beat of my heart. I had nearly been a pawn in a plan so twisted it made my stomach churn. I whispered to the empty attic, the words catching in my throat. He was going to kill me. My mind replayed the fire, the smoke that had clawed at my lungs, the heat searing the walls, the scaffolding that had been my only escape. I had thought it was fate, chance, survival.
But no.
It was Adrian's design all along. I picked up the itinerary again, tracing the flight number and departure time with a shaking finger. Tomorrow, I muttered. They're leaving tomorrow. After I was supposed to, my voice trailed off. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I needed help. But who? Who could I trust when the man I loved, the man I thought I knew, was the mastermind behind this nightmare? Then Levi's face came to mind. Detective Levi Vance. Tall, steady, with eyes that seemed to see through deception like it was air. He had been assigned to investigate the fire from the start, had asked questions I brushed off at the time. Maybe he could help me now. I reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed his number. Every second the line rang felt like an eternity. Detective Vance, his voice answered, calm, professional, but there was an edge of curiosity. Levi, it's Aurora Reed, I said, my voice almost breaking. I found something. Something about the fire, about Adrian. There was a pause on the other end, then a low, steady, start from the beginning. I swallowed, took a deep breath, and laid out the story. The attic, the hidden compartment, the forged ID, the flight itinerary. Every detail I could remember, every shred of evidence I held in my hands. When I finished, Levi's voice was quiet but firm. Aurora, stay put. Don't confront them. You've just given me the key to stopping them. I exhaled, relief and fear mingling in a chaotic rush. For the first time since the fire, I felt a sliver of control. The predator in my life wasn't untouchable.
And
I was no longer just a victim. I clenched the documents in my hands, my knuckles white, and whispered to myself, this ends differently. This time, I survive and I fight back. Levi arrived at my apartment just as dusk settled, the sky a bruised mix of purple and gray. I watched him step inside, eyes sharp, movement controlled. Everything about him screamed that he belonged in control of chaos, not me. And yet, for the first time in days, I felt a measure of safety. Show me what you found, he said, his voice calm but firm. I laid the passport, driver's license, and flight itinerary on the table, spreading them like pieces of a puzzle I hoped he could solve. He leaned over, examining each detail meticulously. His brow furrowed at the forged ID. They went to a lot of trouble, he muttered. Changing your name, your entire identity. They weren't leaving anything to chance. I could feel the anger bubbling up again. They planned my death like it was a game, I said through clenched teeth. Every detail calculated. The fire, the insurance, the escape, everything. Levi looked up, meeting my gaze. And now you're alive. That's the part they didn't account for. His words were like a spark in the darkness. For the first time, the fear in me felt manageable. I nodded, determination settling in my chest like a stone. We stop them tomorrow, I said. Levi raised an eyebrow. We don't just rush in blindly. This has to be precise. One mistake, and they disappear, or worse, they come after you again. I swallowed hard but felt a thrill of power. I won't let them get away with this. Not after everything. We spent hours going over the flight details, the security footage from the airport, and the likely routes Adrian and Giselle would take. Levi's voice was steady, strategic. We'll set up a sting. You stay here safe. I'll coordinate with airport security and plainclothes officers. When they arrive, we catch them before they even reach the gate. I nodded, though my mind raced. I could picture Adrian's smug expression, Giselle's calculating smirk. I hated them both, but I hated the idea that they might think they could manipulate and destroy me even more. Do you need me there? I asked, unable to hide the tremor in my voice. Levi's expression softened.
No.
You've done enough by surviving and bringing me this evidence. Your job now is to stay alive and let me handle them. I clenched the edge of the table, the papers crumpling slightly under my grip. I felt fear, yes, but also something unfamiliar. Exhilaration. I was no longer a passive observer of my own life. I had been reborn from the fire, and now I was actively reclaiming it. As Levi left to coordinate the operation, I whispered to myself, almost defiantly, tomorrow, justice will come, and I'll finally be free of them forever. I hardly slept that night. Every creak of the apartment, every distant siren, made me startle as if Adrian himself were walking through the door. I kept the forged documents and itinerary close, almost like a talisman, a reminder that I had survived his plan, and that I had allies now. Morning came too quickly, and with it, the low, anxious hum of anticipation. I imagined them, Adrian in his tailored suit, Giselle at his side, both moving with the arrogance of people who thought the world bent to their will. They had no idea the game had changed. My phone buzzed.
It was Levi.
They've arrived at the airport. Officers are in position. You stay put. No heroics, he said. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Understood, I whispered, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. Minutes stretched into an eternity. My mind kept replaying every moment. The fire, the hidden compartment, the forged ID. I could feel the weight of my old life lifting, piece by piece. Every fear that had once held me hostage was now fueling me with clarity and purpose. Then, a photo popped into my head. Adrian's smug grin, Giselle's calculating eyes. I felt a surge of anger I couldn't suppress. Not today, I murmured. Not ever again. Levi called again. They're moving through security. The operation is a go. I want you to keep your phone close. Any sign they deviate, I'll handle it. I paced my apartment, heart hammering, trying to calm the storm inside. I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. The fire had burned away my illusions, and now I was facing truth and betrayal head-on. Then I saw it on the news feed, just a brief update about 2 passengers matching their descriptions, heading for the gate. My stomach clenched. This was it. I whispered to the empty room. This ends now, Adrian. No more lies, no more plans, no more me being afraid. I sat down, breathing deliberately, reminding myself that survival wasn't just about running. It was about strategy, patience, and trust. And for the first time, I trusted someone completely to see justice through. Levi's voice came one last time before the sting operation reached its peak. They're in position.
Stay calm.
You've done your part. Now, let them face the consequences. I clutched the documents to my chest, feeling a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. The man who had tried to end me was minutes away from his reckoning. And for the first time in years, I felt a truth I had long denied. I was free. I sat on my couch, every muscle tense, as if my body could somehow jump through the phone line to the airport. Levi's updates came in short bursts, each one a lifeline. They've passed security. Officers in position. Stand by. I gripped the forged documents in my hand, my fingers digging into the paper. Each breath was shallow, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I pictured Adrian's smug face, Giselle's cold eyes, both thinking they had already won. Then Levi's calm, steady voice cut through the tension. Aurora, they're moving to the gate. You need to stay here. Do not. Yes, I know. I snapped, but even as I said it, I understood. I had been running my whole life, trying to control everything, trying to stay perfect, stay safe. But now, the only control I had was letting someone else act on the evidence I had uncovered. I had survived the fire. I had survived the betrayal. I could survive this. Minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Levi's voice was almost reverent this time. They've been stopped. Adrian and Giselle are in custody. Everything went according to plan. I sank into the couch, feeling a rush of relief so powerful it made me dizzy. My legs went weak, my body trembling from the tension I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It's over, I whispered, as if saying it aloud made it real. Tears stung my eyes, not just from relief, but from something deeper. The weight of years of careful, controlled living lifting, leaving me raw and open. I had been reborn. I had clawed my way through fire, betrayal, and fear, and now I was here, alive, and stronger than I had ever been. The thought of Adrian, smugly imagining he could erase me, now being powerless, made a cold satisfaction curl through me. But I also knew it wasn't revenge I sought. It was justice, and for the first time, I felt I could pursue it without fear or restraint. I breathed deeply, finally letting my shoulders relax. The fire had taught me something I hadn't realized until now. Life wasn't about perfection or appearances. It was about truth, survival, and the courage to confront what others hid in darkness. Levi's voice came one last time that day, softer now, almost personal. Aurora, you did the right thing. You were brave, and your courage made this possible. I smiled, a real, unguarded smile. Thank you, Levi, for seeing me through this. And in that moment, I felt the first real flicker of hope, not just survival, but a life rebuilt on my terms, with truth as my foundation and freedom as my gift. The days after the arrest were strangely quiet, almost unreal. News reports ran their brief stories about Adrian and Giselle being held on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder, but for me, it felt like watching someone else's life. I had survived the fire, uncovered the betrayal, and seen justice done, but the aftermath was a different kind of trial. I walked through my apartment, letting my fingers brush over the surfaces I had once obsessed over keeping perfect. Dust motes floated in the sunlight, the floorboards creaked, and the furniture was slightly out of place. And yet, I didn't feel irritation or panic. For the first time, I noticed the beauty in imperfection. My world no longer demanded flawless structure. It demanded truth, and I had that in abundance. Levi called often, checking in not professionally, but personally. His voice had a steady warmth I hadn't expected, and each call was a small reminder that I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, he appeared at my door unannounced. "Thought you might need some company," he said, leaning casually against the frame. His presence was calming, the kind that made chaos seem manageable. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice carried a softness I hadn't allowed myself to use in months. "I know," he said with a small smile. "But sometimes, it's nice to not be fine alone." We talked for hours. Not about Adrian, not about the fire, not about betrayal, but about trivial things. Books, old movies, favorite cafes in town. I found myself laughing genuinely, the sound unfamiliar and liberating. Levi listened without judgment, without expectation. It felt safe. I realized that the rebirth I had experienced wasn't just about escaping death. It was about embracing life fully, without pretense. And Levi had become a part of that new life. He hadn't replaced what I had lost, but he had offered something I hadn't realized I needed: trust, partnership, and perhaps love. At one point, he reached across the table and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. "You've been through hell," he said softly, "but you came out stronger. I admire that." I felt heat rise to my cheeks, a warmth that had nothing to do with embarrassment. "I had to survive," I whispered. "And I'm finally learning what living really means." As the night stretched on, I understood that my life had changed irrevocably. The fire, Adrian's betrayal, Giselle's treachery, they were all behind me. Ahead was a world I could navigate on my terms, with truth as my compass and Levi as my anchor. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a future without fear, one filled with honesty, courage, and a love I could finally trust. Healing wasn't instant. I had survived a fire, faced betrayal, and uncovered a plot to end my life, and yet, the scars ran deeper than I had anticipated. Nights were the hardest. Shadows crept into my apartment, echoing memories of flames, smoke, and Adrian's smirk. But Levi's steady presence made the darkness bearable. We met often, sometimes casually, sometimes deliberately, sharing dinners or walks through the city streets. Each encounter was a small step in reclaiming the part of me I had lost, the part that could laugh, trust, and breathe without suspicion. One evening, we walked along the river, the lights reflecting like 1,000 tiny fires on the water's surface. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in months. Levi glanced at me, his expression soft but focused. "You're different now," he said. "Not just because of what you survived, but because of how you're moving forward." I smiled faintly, looking down at my hands. "I feel different. Stronger, maybe, and freer, but still cautious. It's hard to trust again, even when someone earns it." He reached out, gently taking my hand in his. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through me, a mixture of comfort and electricity. "Trust isn't given lightly," he said, "but you don't have to rush it. I'll be here, steady, no games, no deceit. Just me." For the first time, I let myself truly lean into someone else. I didn't have to plan every detail, control every outcome, or hide behind walls of perfection. Levi's presence reminded me that life was meant to be experienced fully, not managed obsessively. We talked late into the night about our fears, our dreams, and the things we'd never shared with anyone else. And in the quiet moments between words, I felt a connection I hadn't known I could have, a bond forged not in convenience or charm, but in honesty, safety, and shared vulnerability. As we paused on the bridge, watching the city's reflection shimmer, Levi turned to me, his gaze steady and gentle. "You've survived so much, Aurora. You deserve happiness, not just survival, but joy. And I want to be part of that." My chest tightened, emotions swirling, relief, hope, desire. I think I'm ready," I whispered. And as he leaned in, brushing his lips against mine in a soft, careful kiss, I realized that rebirth wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about opening your heart again, daring to love and trust, and embracing a life rebuilt from ashes. In that kiss, I felt the fire inside me transform, not destructive, but illuminating. And for the first time in years, I smiled without fear, knowing that the future was mine to shape. Weeks passed, and the world around me began to feel less like a place of shadows and danger, and more like a canvas I could shape with my own hands. Adrian and Giselle were behind bars, their schemes unraveled, their lives reduced to court dates and headlines. For the first time, I didn't feel fear when I walked past the newsstand, reading the reports of their arrest with a calm certainty. Justice had been served. Levi and I had settled into a rhythm that felt natural, effortless, and comforting. We spent our days talking, laughing, and sometimes simply sitting in silence, enjoying the presence of someone who understood both the darkness I had faced and the light I was reaching toward. One crisp afternoon, Levi suggested we visit the old library, the place where the fire had once threatened to end everything. My heart skipped at the memory, but I agreed. I wanted to face the past fully, without the weight of fear dragging me down. Standing in the charred remains, now cleaned and partially restored, I traced the walls with my fingers. "I can't believe I survived that," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. "You did more than survive," Levi replied, taking my hand in his. "You lived, even when it should have destroyed you. You found truth, faced betrayal, and came out stronger." I smiled, squeezing his hand. I never imagined I could feel this free. But I do. And it's because I stopped running because I trusted someone like you. Levi leaned closer, his gaze gentle but intent. "And I'll never stop protecting that freedom, Aurora. Not now, not ever." My chest tightened, and for a moment, I let myself feel the full weight of all I had endured, and all I had gained. The fear, the fire, the betrayal, they were all part of the story that led me here, to this moment of clarity and joy. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, then cupped my cheek. "You've been reborn, Aurora. And I think it's time the world sees the happiness you deserve." I laughed softly, a sound full of relief and hope, and pressed my lips to his. The kiss was tender, affirming, a promise of partnership and love. It was no longer about survival, it was about living fully, openly, and honestly. As we pulled back, I rested my forehead against his. "Together," I whispered. "Together," he echoed. For the first time in my life, I felt truly safe, truly alive, and truly free. The fire had burned away my fears, and in the ashes, I had built a life grounded in truth, justice, and love. And with Levi by my side, I knew the future would be ours to shape, fearless, unshakable, and full of light.